Doncs bona tarda a tothom, bona tarda a tots i totes.
Good evening, everyone.
Benvinguts a aquest tercer
Welcome to this
diàleg
third dialogue.
roig verd.
It's called red-green dialogue, the last one of this year. I see that some new people are coming into the room. I'm just buying some extra time so that everyone can be connected properly. And now I'll introduce some of our guests and I'll show you how we will work. As you could see through the title, we entitled this event Global Discourse on Feminism, Global Speech on Feminism. So we wanted to turn this event into something that speaks about the state of the art in the feminist movement and the rights of women, focusing on two different cases, on two different specific cases. One would be the struggle of women's rights in Iran, something that is on the news has been on the news for weeks, and the case of Poland. Poland is also struggling to survive in that respect. We wanted to frame it into this area. We have three different guests that I will introduce now. First of all, we have Anahita Nassir. She's a politologist. She's Catalan-Iranian, and therefore, from a politological and from a perspective of a person who has strong links with Iran, she'll tell us about the situation about the women's struggle in Iran, a situation that is being lived on the current basis. She'll be able to tell us what's been happening and where we're going to. Secondly, we also have we had to excuse the presence of Magdalena because of an agenda problem, but we have Aleksandra Sidoruk. She will express something. I think that I'm temporarily disappeared from the screen. I'm back. This is my introduction. I will first of all give the floor to Anahita. So Anahita, you have the floor. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for having invited me to share with you some impressions about such a fascinating and contradictory country like Iran. To understand what's happening in Iran, we have to approach its geostrategic importance and also to speak about some of the elements of its recent history. This way we will understand what is happening currently. Iran is between the east and the west, right in the middle of Eurasia, connected to the Persian Gulf, having sharing borders with Iraq, Afghanistan, and others. It connects the Persian Gulf with the Caspian Sea, area of high resources. It has, according to different reports, it includes different and strong resources. Many people live there. It turns this into a special situation since the moment that the Soviet Union disappeared. But currently, Russia is the strongest regional power, and Iran has not been able to avoid the presence of the US in the area. It's highly influenced because of its military power, its foreign power, and its economic interests. But it's also true that we have to understand is the turning point of contemporary history of Iran, 1979, the Islamic Revolution in general terms. And cutting the long story short, there was a great resentment of most of the population against the Shah because of the corruption, the repression, and the economic inequalities. The Shah had a very far image, far from the real situation. The revolution unified heterogeneous groups, different social classes, has different ideologies. In fact, as in other revolutions, the coalition did not survive to victory. The Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the spiritual leader of the revolution, was very popular because of his character that could not be bribed against the Shah, and because of its lifestyle. Since his return from France, he increased the power of the clerical sector. It was a mixture of political, economic, social, and religious revolution. 8 sequels are still currently have these consequences. It was a revolution that was not fitting in the models, and the result was a theocratic republic. The model that arose was a very complex situation of different political organs, and we have a spiritual leader, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. The structure, on the other hand, makes the spiritual leader, who is the person who is not voted, will control the main decisions between the armed forces, the media, security, defense, nuclear power, and everything depends on different institutional filters. And that leads back to the spiritual leader. First, we had Khomeini, and since his death in 1989, it's Ali Khamenei who's the current spiritual leader. Evidently, the current regime is not democratic, and the situation of human rights that we've seen in this last 2.5 months that have been strongly deteriorated. Protests in Iran have been frequent, decades of repression and of women's oppression. There's now a gap between the leading class and the Iranian society, and a very important part of the population is not feeling happy with their demands. Since 1999, we had first uprisings among students, then we had other uprisings in 1999. There was a movement that opposed the government. It was called the Green Movement. It was headed by Musabi, and well, they said that there was a possible voting fraud. He is in home arrest, and the movement disappeared. In the year 2017, 2019, more protests appeared because of economic considerations like the increase of gas price. And for the first time, the internet was stopped, and the death of thousands of people who are opposing the regime was reported. The current protest that began after Masha Amini's death because of her foulard represented a turning point that is headed by women. Iran has a strong moral regimes imposed by force. It's an area of desperation with an uncertain future, marked by very few professional and social results, having greater quotas of freedom and political freedom. But in the 1980, after the revolution, it was mandatory to use Chador. It was like rejecting the modernity imposed by the Western, imposed by the Shah. Even if it's hard for us to understand it, it was an instrument so that women could go from the private to the public sphere. Over the years, women have lived in an absolutely unfavorable context with obsolete laws from the 14th century, for example. The current legal framework is unequally and discriminatory. For example, a woman cannot travel abroad without her husband's permission, or in Iran, inherits half as much as a man. Her testimony in court is worth half of the man. The civil liability has passed 15 years for men and 9 for women. So normally the laws are discriminatory for women, and laws are tougher when punishing a woman versus a man. So what we see is that there are so many laws that favor men as compared to women. They don't let the women to have these areas of freedom that all women would like to have. Women have been silenced, and they're very tired. And during all these years, because this is a child that comes from far away, have been, fighting on a daily basis, their daily routine, silent struggle, very small, that now turned into this burst. Very small protest. University women went to the universities with their nails painted. We know that at the entrance they would be asked to eliminate that nail polish. So we know few women, well, or many women actually showed their disconformity with the regime. There have been other more evident things, like the women in 1976. Well, they had a birth rate of from down to 2.1 children versus 2.8 in 1996. We have to understand that women can work in most positions except for two. President of the Republic, this can be a man and she. And in fact, the Nobel Prize, Shirin Ebadi, was a judge, but later on, she was forced to abandon her position. Shirin Ebadi's Nobel Prize in the year 2003 represented a worldwide recognition, not only for her work in defense of women's rights, but it was also a wake-up call, human rights situation in Iran. Both her and other activists like Merangiskar or Milou Farsutudeh, who are in jail, are fighting and have fought all their lives to achieve an equality. They are brave, but brave as many others, many anonymous women. It's so obvious that the punishments and law devised 14 years ago are no longer applicable. Women are asking for a change. We have realized that Iranian women are either scared to death or they have gone beyond that fear because they are not intimidated by power. Now they believe that they have nothing to lose and everything can be won. They are strong, they're challenging, they are leading these protests, and more men support them because they are altogether against the regime. These are collective actions that little by little change the situation. These are seeds that one day will sprout, will blossom, because it's very difficult to determine how things will evolve and what the repercussions will be. Iran normally challenges expectations, and they are immune to conventional theories. But it's true that the regime has a very poor strength. As you could see, the regime is repressing protests very strongly because the degree of repression is a political option, even if for us it doesn't really seem like it's so. But there's been a strengthening of protests. This is not a problem for men or too many, but they want to avoid gaps in the government where they share different positions, and Khamenei is in charge of striking that balance. And even from here, everything seems to be a monolithic system because there are no political parties. There are different groups that fight for the control of the power, and have been fighting all these years. Evidently, I would love to have a glass ball to see the future. But between the collapse and the survival of the regime, there are many shades of gray. Either protests stop because of the massive repression, or protests just fade away until the next spark lights them up, or they achieve real changes or different conceptions of the regime. Maybe there is an evolution towards a less theocratic component, but this would involve an improvement of the life conditions of women and men. And some people consider that the Revolutionary Guard should be waiting for their moment to give a coup d'etat, and this guard are in charge to maintain the precepts of the revolution. They are a political group, a paramilitary force, other than the army, that in all these years have gained a lot of power. And maybe they are waiting for their moment. Well, we don't think the protests will disappear very soon, and probably we could see that at the beginning, changes were asked in the regime. And therefore, even if this is a spontaneous movement without a clear leader, and this is something that is hard to have to win a revolution without a structured group, it's also true that even if this change will not be evident or imminent, sooner or later, the situation in Iran will change. These are seeds that one day will blossom. But it's clear that this solution in Iran are in the hands of Iranians. And women are a key component of this social change, because we always heard that in Iran, students, women, and ethnic groups are those that can push the system, can look for a change. And the most important is understanding that this struggle against gender discrimination is crossed with other types of discrimination: social and economic, ethnical, political, religious groups. Therefore, this struggle for democracy crosses with the struggle for gender equality. And it's also true that women have worked a long way, and many of them have lost their lives, and many others will lose their lives, but many, many more will go on, because there is no other way as to reach the end. Freedom and justice for everyone, that's the only possible solution. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anahita. It's very interesting. Since I disappeared a couple moments, I would like to say that we organized this event with the support of the Green European Foundation, and we had the possibility of sending questions through the chat. So if you want to use this opportunity and send some questions through the chat when we finish the other two interventions, well, I'll gather those questions. I will send them to our three guests, and then we'll talk about it. Thank you. Aleksandra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here tonight. So thank you for having me. I would like to focus on the topic of abortion because of two reasons. First of all, it's the topic that is the closest to my heart when it comes to my activism. And I also believe that this topic and abortion law in Poland gives a very good overview of how Polish women are treated in their country. I must admit that it's been a while since I discussed that topic and since I publicly talked about abortion. It is mainly caused by what happened in October 2020. It was months and months of organizing protests, and at some point my life revolved around abortion and pro-choice movement in Poland, and it was very draining, mentally draining. But I'm happy to be back and to look at this situation from a different perspective. And you know, when you're a young woman living in a very conservative country, a young feminist, an atheist in such a country, and a woman who doesn't want to have children, abortion will always be first option, and it was always a first option for me. So finding myself in a situation that I found myself in was very scary, not only as an activist, but also like personally. But let's maybe take a look at what happened and what caused all those emotions and all those changes in law. So as you might have known or not, before October 2020, in Poland, we had something called abortion compromise. It allowed abortion in 3 different cases. One, it was when the pregnancy caused a threat to the life or health of the woman. When tests indicated that there is a likelihood of severe disability or maybe incurable disease of the fetus. And the third cause was when the pregnancy is suspected to be a result of a crime like rape, for example. The compromise was established mostly by male politicians and priests. But recently, in October 2020, the compromise was broken when a Polish Constitutional Tribunal decided that the cause when there is a high probability of severe and irreversible disease of fetus is not incompatible to the Constitution of Poland. And to show you or to describe to you how big impact it made, we can only just look at the statistics. Only in 2019, a year before the judgment, 98% of abortions in Poland were performed because of this reason. The other 2%, it was due to rape. So in this case, we can say that abortion has been almost fully banned in Poland. And what happened in October was, as I said, scary, but also it brought this very spectacular movement. And as someone who was very deep in the activist bubble, I went to the streets and I have experienced something I never did in my life. Everyone who was terrified, who was scared, who was angry at what happened, everyone was in the streets. It was young people who didn't vote, who are not interested in politics and don't go out to protest. It was whole families, older people, younger people. Some of them were Catholics, teachers, students. So it showed me what is happening, how this horrible thing brought all of us together to the streets. And everyone was angry. Everyone was very frustrated and wanted a change and wanted to express how they felt. And as much as the topic was terrifying, we were also trying to have as much fun as possible, meaning that we played music, we danced to show the government that it's not going to be like this forever, that we are going out to the streets to show them that we are here and we are watching, and this will change. The situation for women in Poland will change. And as you might have heard, there were a lot of police violence during those protests. It obviously depended very much on what city we are talking about, because, for instance, in Warsaw, the police violence was constant. There were girls who had their arms broken. For example, there were cases of sexual harassment at the police station, and a lot of violation of citizens' rights made by police. But throughout all of that, the most important words and most important messages were seen throughout the whole country. We got to send a message from women that experienced difficulties in pregnancies, that had this experience and when their lives were threatened. What I must admit was the most terrible in all of that is what happens a year after the judgment. It was a real horror because the judgment brought its first victims. And there is a story that I would like to bring up a bit to show you what it means for women in Poland to have this ban and to live with this ban on a daily basis. So Isabella, it was a woman, her name was Isabella, from small city in Poland. She was pregnant, she was a mother of two, a wife, and she was in a very wanted pregnancy. She started to feel unwell at the 22 weeks of her pregnancy, and she decided to go to the hospital to get any help. And after the examination, doctors found out that fetus was still alive, but they confirmed previously diagnosed fetal defects. And according to what we know right now, there was a very high CRP level, and also there was a confirmation of inflammation, and she was given an antibiotic. She started feeling very, very unwell. She was trying to get the help. She was telling the doctors how she felt, but she never really got the help she needed. So after a few days, fetus was dead, and according to the information that we have, she unfortunately died the day later due to septic shock and an infection that she got after the pregnancy. There are different women that experience the same thing. They are victims of a system which is scary for women to get pregnant and to have children if they want to have children, but it's also a system that is oppressive towards doctors. This is a system that puts doctors and nurses in a very uncomfortable situation where they have to indeed choose between saving someone's life and losing their entire career and job because of that. It's not only Isabella. This is also Justyna, this is Marta, this is Ania, Agata, Agnieszka. This is repeating. This is what is happening right now. And unfortunately, these names are real, these stories are real, and these are the real consequences of unscientific obsessions of religious fundamentalists who are right now in Polish government, but also who are right now in Catholic Church, having huge influence on government, on some businesses that are owned by state. And most importantly, they have a media that is reaching a lot of people that are believing all of that and are influenced by their propaganda. And what I would like to also express that it is very systematic. It's not only because like one day Constitutional Tribunal decided to ban abortion in Poland. This is a situation that we don't have sexual education. It is very difficult sometimes to get contraception in Poland. Finally, they introduced recently a record of pregnancies. So general prosecutor, now have an access to information about all the pregnancies in Poland. They say it's because they want to check if everything is okay with woman and if she's getting all the medication she needs. But the truth is that we don't feel safe about this system. Women are scared to get pregnant and they don't want to have kids, not only because it's a threat to them, but also if they decide to get an abortion, it will be somehow noted in the records. So what I would like to also emphasize is that Isabella, when she was texting her mother, was very much aware of the situation she found herself in. She said that they cannot do anything and that they will wait until it, which is the fetus, or how she called it, baby, will die or something starts happening. And if nothing starts, then she can expect sepsis. So she was very much aware of what is happening, and she was communicating that to her family few hours, few days before she died. And this is a consequence of letting far-right politicians rule. This is a consequence of letting Catholic Church and Polish Pope Karol Wojtyła spread their obsessions very successfully and spread their very harmful propaganda. And as I said, it's about treating women as a machine who will carry the fetus, no matter what are the threats, and no matter if she's ready for it, no matter if she wants it, she will have to carry the baby. If she dies, she dies. But if baby, for example, will be born with some difficulties, if, for example, it will be born with disabilities, there's no real support to the children or to their families. Then the government is turning backs on parents who came to the parliament and asked for the help for the babies with disabilities. But I would like to finish without any conclusions, without maybe any words that will, give us hope, but with some practical information. If there's anyone who will find themselves in the situation that they will be in unwanted pregnancy in Poland, whether they live in Poland, whether they will be visiting Poland, there are a few information that I would like to share. First of all, you can still terminate your own pregnancy by getting pills. In order to do so, please contact womanhelp.org or Abortion Dream Team, an organization that is doing an amazing job and who is now one of the activists is facing charges in the court. In Poland, aborting your own pregnancy, terminating your own pregnancy is not a crime. You face nothing if you bought or took abortion drugs, abortion pills, or if you went abroad for an abortion. If there is someone helping you to get the pills, they will face the charges. The best abortion solution is a set of pills that are consisting 1 mifepristone and 4 misoprostol tablets. Also, Abortion Dream Team, go to their website. You will find a lot of very helpful information on how to proceed with pills. They cost no more than 75 euros normally. Obviously, getting abortion abroad is more expensive and requires a lot of resources and a lot of support also that you get if you contact, for example, Abortion Without Borders. What I would like to also say is that I find it very scary and very sad that once Poland was a country, that found some comfort in Ukraine. So Polish women could go to Ukraine to get an abortion, and they use that. But right now, women that are coming from Ukraine after experiencing rape and getting in the result in unwanted pregnancy, try to come to Poland and they cannot find help. This is what we know, and this is a real issue. Even though it's still legal to have abortion due to rape, in practice, it's very difficult to obviously prove it, but especially if you're coming from a country where rape is a weapon and there's no way for women sometimes to prove the rape, but there is also a long procedure involving police and prosecutor. So in practice, it makes it impossible for women from Ukraine to have safe and accessible abortion in Poland right now. And this is the state of play right now in Poland when it comes to abortion. There are a lot of amazing organizations that are trying to help women however they can. And we keep on fighting. We try not to give up, but the truth is that the government needs to change, and media needs to be independent, and society needs to face what is happening and go out the streets and see and control, or maybe try to control, what the government is doing as much as it's obviously possible. Thank you.
Moltes gràcies, Aleksandra.
Thank you very much, Aleksandra. To tell you the truth, I dare to say that this presentation has been very shocking and highly inspiring, because it's not just a theory, it's experience and practice. This makes this conversation to be very intense. I would like to convey this feeling that many other people have. Before giving the floor to Maria, I would like to mention to Anahita and Aleksandra that one of the questions that we received, and in both cases, if you see any political leadership, Anahita said that there's no political leadership. How are these actions organized? And in the case of Aleksandra, obviously these are different situations in Poland and Iran, but the political scenario, the parties, the political parties, what is the situation like? Is there an alternative to the policies? And in your case, in the area of the Greens, this is just a question for later on. And Maria, you have now the floor to deliver the third and final presentation. Thank you for inviting me and for letting me listen to you, because, as Mark said, this generates a feeling of emotional gap. It reminds you the feeling, the women's rights are always frail. They're not totally one. They are always at risk of going a step back. So the question I have with respect to feminism leads me to think that feminism has to fight for its rights in one trying to get out or get rid of a regime like in Iran, or more defensive like in the case of Poland. But fighting in the core issues, which are always the same issues, is achieving for women a situation of autonomy with respect to men, and a situation to be considered human rights with the same conditions and the same rights as our brothers, men. This is the core of our struggle all over the world and during all history. And so no matter where you look at, and coming from different contexts of advance and of defeat, well, you are always speaking about the same topics. It's being a citizen with equal rights and equal value. Ultimately, the system we have is a system that has kept us at a place, turning us as an object that is being possessed by men. Historically, we've been possessed in families, and this is something that makes us feel that we are the possession of a man, and we have to find a place of equality. We are people. That's what feminism says. We are not the possession of anyone. We do not have to receive any mandates about our way of being and living our lives. And Ana de Miguel very well said that women could never participate in the design of the world, on how societies are built. In some societies more than in others, but this world is not made by women, it's made by men. And if you look at it globally, it's even worse. The world is becoming smaller. What happens in Poland affects us. What happens in the US affects us. What happens in Iran is affecting us, because we are at a process, a huge process that is making the global more local. It's turning things locally. We don't know much about what happens to some African women. We don't know what happens in China. So we are generating connections, but at the same time, we see that we have different worlds that we know about and worlds that we do not know anything about. And topics include autonomy, economic, and reproductive economy. I want to put this together, because if you don't have reproductive autonomy, you cannot live the way you want. If you don't have economic autonomy and violence, well, in Latin America, feminicides, killing women because they don't obey, because they want to stay away from you, or raping, which is the maximum action of power, And then we have the issue of participating in public life, making the world in a certain way. Our voice has to be part of what we are building. And at the same time, all the issues of our daily lives as women, as men, live their lives, we have to live ours. And in this neoliberal world we are living in, we have to deal with women's bodies. What happens to our bodies? How this is seen from a male's life, possession, or bodification in our world. Is bodification. In other worlds, is the veil, the shadow, the hijab, how we have to dress or undress, how to look at a man so that he is turned or is not turned on. And then we have the body as a market element. These are transnational elements that make us feel that we are part of a smaller world, and what happens in other parts of the world is affecting us, and these allow us to generate alliances that were unheard of. The Me Too, for example, this is something that is replicated all over the world. Or that song in Chile, when they said the rapist is you, some women accusing, saying, no matter how I dress, no matter how I behave, you are the rapist. A performance that was reproduced all over the world in institutes of so many countries, a global element of common struggle. This is happening to many of us. Many of us know people that have had that kind of experiences, and also the reaction is extended all over the world. It's global. I'm interested to speak about the current moment. It's a very delicate time in history for women. I would forget to mention that feeling that we heard about. Feminism comes in waves. There's a wave that progresses and the next wave progresses even further on, but that's not the case. We have to determine what remains after the first wave. The waves come and go. Have you advanced in your waves? Have you advanced in your actions? I try to study in these cases in Spain how we evolved, not the big waves of feminism, but maybe little tides, progressing little by little. And we have to be aware of the fact that movements act this way. There is a tide or a wave, and there's a backlash. What is the hegemony of your actions? If you compare women during the transition, the democratic transition, there is an abyss to what we are before. There is a quality, a quantum leap. You can see what happened in the building of equal rights policies or anti-violence policies based on those waves, how we can gain formal equal rights, how we can have our own laws, how we were able to achieve a transversality, a cross-sectionality, how we were in charge to determine how what happens in our different social classes, in our different races, how these conceptual quantum leaps have turned into laws, and how these situations step back, because there was a strong step back during our crisis that generated a common sense that we had, because we said we had laws, we had structures, we were equal to men. At the time, we spoke about the mirage of equality or equal rights. In one way or another, this is the process after that situation. We've witnessed years of globalization, years, for example, 2016, 2018, the eruption of many young girls or young women into feminism, focusing a lot in the case of sexual freedom, the case of group raping, case of Me Too. So violence happens all over the place in different areas and different cultures, in different societies. We had to try to generate more common sense with respect to sexual violence, towards the yes is yes and no is no. So getting rid of the practices that blurred the world of sex and the world of violence. This has to do with consent and with desire as well. So the moment of big demonstrations, the big performances, all the moment of intersectionality, bunches, many women, tons of women that came from precarious labor markets, cleaning ladies that requested their labor rights, all these feminist reivindications that shook this country, our country, and that generated a quantum leap, a big conceptual change. In the area of equal rights and the struggle, in the area of struggle against violence, we've had moments of progress and moments of stepping back, but there's been a consolidation. Currently, I believe we are living a moment of difficulty. On the one hand, we have clear advances. We have, well, for example, girls are equal to their male friends in school, for example. My grandmother, when my grandfather told her, cook lunch now, she cooked lunch then. That was her obligation, that was her work, and that was her obedience. My daughter cannot understand that attitude. We are considered as equal human beings, and that's what happens with the new generations. There are gains that are there. Even if they are frail, they are weak sometimes. We have structure, we have governments, and we have a certain degree of common sense that is being bravely won. We have progress. Today, there's been a legislation change in abortion. We have different women from different origins with different visions joining efforts, and we have huge risks in front of us. I think about two elements. One is the strength that the far right wing, the strength that it has with clearly anti-feminist positions. that try to eliminate the women's rights, and this is their flagship. This is happening in many different places in Europe. Sorry, we've seen this in different parliaments, in different countries, voices that shout, scream against women's rights, and they're confronting the law that is trying to protect women against gender violence, that they would eliminate it, and they understand that the structure of equality is something silly that should be eliminated. Well, this direct opposition is something new for us. I had never seen that in my life. Such a straightforward position against women's rights is something unheard of. We see that there is a hegemonic gender presentation that is confronted by a negationist, which is openly male chauvinistic in nature, and it's well, democratically, it's legitimate. They think that they can defend their own thesis. So we have a bunch of people, young people, that express negation to gender violence. This is increasing. So we have this clear opposition in the far right wing, which include positions that say, well, we have to join into our borders, we have to be strong within our family, and they negate whatever is said against men, and they don't accept anything that is said in favor of women. And the final element that I would like to express has to do with the risk of adapting or adapting neoliberalism discourse. There's a part of neoliberalism that has a more intelligent position, which is accepting that women won't accept a formal difference of rights. Therefore, accepting these formal rights means one thing, but neoliberalism works on persuading other people so that they can have still the same role they had in the past. This is not understood as a reactionary, but rather it's addressed as a modern attitude. Mercantilization of bodies, all that can be paid with money is good, they say. We currently have a transnational market of women that are sexually exploited. Spain is a country where many poor women get into to be sexually exploited, but also surrogate mothers, market thing. Not only surrogate mothers. I learned, for example, that currently we have skin traffic, poor women who are in bordellos in work to nurture the aesthetic clinics in the first world. So the body of women as an element of to be marketed. This sexual exploitation has a counterpart. That means in the Western world, you can, if you have money, you can buy everything you need. There's no limit to some. You can have a child, even if your body won't let you to it. You can buy everything. Your wishes are above reality. So I believe that this element of exploiting poor women and this neoliberal discourse of your wishes are the most important things, well, it generates a strange situation. And also we have the gender exploitation, because girls are bombarded with bodification you know, I didn't really expect that pink or blue will, this blue and pink debate is strong. Bodification is very tough. Sexualization as the path to success is very powerful, and we have all this in our markets. Boys, the same, quite the same. Male pleasure, the influence of the world of pornography, disconnecting the issues of empathy on others. So the body of women as an object, as a sexual object, as a body of consumption, and a market element. So I think that these are the main challenges we have ahead of us. And also feminism understands all these issues. It's hard for us to understand the second element of managing the patriarchy of consent, a patriarchy that is not forcing you, but is that suggesting you that some things. In our case, this is happening at a moment of internal weakness of feminism, at a moment of gap in our struggle. We don't really know what is happening. Very deep discrepancies with respect to the law of sex self-determination or gender self-determination, or how to use prostitution, if this can be accepted or not. This is a moment of separation, of a gap between conceptual positions, and there are many feminists that don't know what to do with respect to this frailty, with these changes of opinion. We have very strong risks in front of us, but we also have a very solid attitude that comes from a fundamental idea, which is being able to conceive we are equally valuable, equally strong, equally equivalent to men. We've fought for many, many years now. We are at the moment, we're at a turning point. 2022 is not 2018, which was a moment of expansion, but we also have tools to face the change. I'll leave it here. I would simply like to say that, well, that I tried to make a brief summary of important things in our minds. It's a moment to listen to others. We have to be listened and to listen to others. We have to listen to other positions, and we have to understand specific situations. Listening to Anahita and Aleksandra made me feel like, well, you know, I was aware of the fact that everything is at risk, nothing is consolidated, and we have to keep on fighting. Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, for your overview.
Et deixo tu una pregunta que ens ha entrat.
We have a question. We have a question that was the role of networks, so and social media as favorable or unfavorable elements to our movement. Anahita and Aleksandra, Maria, let's make a final round of comments to determine what needs to be said to finish our debate. Anahita, your final opinion. With respect to the issue of organizations in Iran after the Islamic Revolution, well, political parties have been banned as such. Therefore, civil organizations of human rights, we have some, and women's organizations. One of the more visible examples was in the year 2006, after the struggle of men against Ahmadinejad, the movement of the 1 million signatures, and women wanted to prove that they were not only women, but that they had men that were demanding equal rights. This movement has been deactivated, And currently in Iran, some organizations are not so connected to protests. Protests are being done thanks to social media, Iran demonstrations, the uprisings. Well, I'm just trying to say revolution. Some dissidents and the Iranian diaspora say that this is a revolution. I don't really dare to say it. They are protests, and these protests have the virtue of using social media to evidence what's happening outside to inside and what's happening inside to the outside. That's why the government interrupts the internet connections so that people cannot be connected or organized. But there is no structure as such, an organization, a leader, someone that heads these demands and these interests that are being reproduced in protest. This, on the one hand, seems that is due to this this way of acting, because the government cannot go against this possible leader. On the other hand, saving distances sounds like they are urban guerrilla and difficult to control, because this is happening in many places, in many cities, small groups. There are not 3 million people demonstrating in the streets, and they can be repressed or they can be arrested. It's also true that these uprisings went beyond Iran's borders. They are in the international arena, and they actually, what they do is to reivindicate human rights that are basic and universal. So women from Iran ultimately have to realize that they are not asking for something of their own in Iran. They're asking for something international. It's something universal. That's why I believe that we have to be involved, and I include myself as Iranian diaspora, totally westernized though. Women, freedom, and life. This is something that can be used anywhere, not just in Iran. And in fact, the importance of Iran's strategic position, if this ever changed in the best possible scenarios, if Iran could improve the situation of women and men, of course, because women don't have an easy life. That would be a great example. We're speaking about Iraq, Afghanistan, we're speaking about Pakistan, where women cannot live an easy life. Therefore, it's a very important element to understand that these protests and this struggle that we are observing, they are facing, is right now in the agenda, of the international agenda. Women that fight for to reivindicate their own lives. And as Maria said, their position is very frail. And something as concrete and so specific as Aleksandra said, which is abortion. Well, in Iran, it's not mentioned. Well, in Iran, they are asking for the freedom to choose to dance or ride a bicycle, because women cannot ride a bike, or dancing, or not using their full art. They want to have the freedom. That's why we have to continue being their voice from abroad. That's the only way that they have for the moment to be able to maintain high spirits from the outside and from the inside. We need to achieve or to gather all the possible examples of human rights violations that happen with no impunity, so that in the future there are proofs and this regime can be judged, can be sued the way they deserve, actually. Thank you. Aleksandra, you have the floor now.
Yes, thank you. To answer the question regarding some organizations and political parties that stand in opposition to Polish government. So maybe starting with organizations. So there are different feminist movements, feminist organizations in Poland. One of the biggest one is called Women's Strike. And this is the organization that is mostly responsible for organizing the movement in October that happened in Warsaw. because this is an organization that is mostly working in Warsaw and is coordinating their work there. And they, after the judgment, they did create this structure that would, prepare a law, prepare legislation to what will happen after the government will change. So they also, after protesting, they started doing this job that needs to be done once we have political situation that will allow us to change the abortion law in Poland. And there are a lot of different organizations in the different cities that are fighting not only for abortion, but also for access to help, for example, to victims of domestic violence, that is helping women that face menstrual poverty, and women that need support in any way. And there are organizations also that focus mostly on abortion and providing women with help and information on how to perform abortion safely in Poland or abroad. But when it comes to political situation, so we have this government that right now is ruling, and it's a union. It's United Far Right. So it's a bunch of far right political parties, including the biggest one, which is Law and Justice, that are against abortion, and that are strongly associated to judges that stand behind the Constitutional Tribunal's judgment. These judges used to be part of this political party. They used to be politicians. They used to be member of parliament, Polish parliament, coming from this very party. And we have very extreme far-right organization, political party called Konfederacja, and they are using even more extreme narrative, not only on women, saying that woman is, supposed to serve God, serve men, and, take care of kids, and really that's it for women, but it's also using very dangerous propaganda and narrative regarding LGBTQI community, regarding Jews, for example, also regarding Ukrainians coming to our country right now, and that we're using very neo-Nazi narrative at some point as well. And then we have a center-right parties that are in favor of old compromise. So the three cases that I mentioned earlier. And this is something that we as Greens, but we as feminists in Poland, we don't want to go back to the compromise. We want to have an abortion law that will allow us to get an abortion whenever we need it and whenever we want. And then what happened this year actually is that the main opposition, the biggest maybe opposition's party, Civic Platform, announced that their new stance on abortion, which is that abortion will be, if they came into ruling, that abortion will be accessible up to 12 week. This is a big political statement from the party that also have conservative roots, that used to also be very close to Catholic Church when they were in government, and that is that its leader also calls himself a conservative. So this is very important that they did notice what this judgment brought, and that they are giving a political promise women that then we can later see if they will keep. And obviously, there's a left part of the political scene. There are Greens who are and always been there for women in a different meaning. For instance, obviously, they've always been in favor of abortion without providing any reason, any motivation behind the abortion. There are always a gender quota in their bodies, in the party's bodies, and they stand for gender equality, gender balance in institutions. They fight. They claim that they will, and we are fighting for a banning the pay gap between men and women. Fighting for menstrual poverty, helping victims of domestic violence, and there is also a left party that regarding women's rights has a very similar stance as Greens. But yes, what I think is very important is to realize the differences that are happening on the political scene, and for Polish society to see these differences in narratives, and to see that there is always a choice, and the choice that they make when they go to vote is a very important, very influencing political choice. So yes, there is an alternative. There's alternative in the biggest opposition party and the Greens, that once this government will lose, hopefully, next elections, that women can finally truly fight for their rights in Poland. Thank you.
Gracias, Aleksandra. Maria.
Thank you, Aleksandra. Maria, now, the question about the networks, right? Well, true. I believe the social media in this case, it's double-edged. It's ambivalent. You know, so sometimes we have the case of Iran is very clear. How close or how closely knitted they feel, because they can send their messages, that we can receive their videos. This sorority, this international sorority, is very evident because they themselves requested this. For example, the Me Too case was very obvious. It starts in a place which is totally alien, women in Hollywood. But all of a sudden you have girls in an institute that express a replica or a connection with the message, a possibility of going beyond your own context. And in these contexts where this can be very useful. So social media is very useful to express ideas. It's a brutal, on the other hand, it's a brutal of male chauvinism influence. I participated in the state agreement against male violence, and there were countermeasures to put limits of sexism in TV. But the YouTubers and influencers and people that indoctrinate, well, that's male indoctrination. And this is used 24 hours, 24/7 by young people. They read things with no filter, as I said before. This has a huge impact, like in the case of pornography, which is another topic that we don't really dare to talk about. Currently, we have kids who are 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old kids that use pornography pornography that they use mainstream is a rape. It's extreme violence. It's a learning to do things against these other people. This happens on a daily basis. You go to a chat and you hear girls that they are asked by boys. They use words that I don't know about. Misogyny and normalized sexual violence. This is part of the social media as well. This is one of the very many topics that we have that are affecting the new generations. We think that every generation that comes is more feminist because the sake of it, but it's not true. We have generational changes. We may have new waves of people that are more misogynist, more violent. We think that time is an element of progress, but that's not true. So we have to, pay more attention to social media. That's a key element. Well, thank you so much to the three of you, Anahita, Aleksandra, and Maria. It's been a very intense session. I hope that the rest of you thought about this the way I do. I'd like to thank you for your presence and enjoy a good end of the year and a good beginning of the new year. Have a great time these days. And thank you so much for being here. Hope to see you soon. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.